Hey, YouTube family, welcome to another edition of the Kevin Strong Show. And in this video, you can see the title right in front of me. The majority of Americans say they are worried about being able to pay for housing. We all know this is an ongoing problem. It's going to get worse before it gets better. I wanted to talk a little bit more in detail about that topic. So when I came across this article, I thought, hey, this would be a great idea to kind of dive into some of the information that this particular article is shedding light on, as so many people are dealing with the affordability crisis. Mortgages are getting out of control in terms of the home prices. When you look at how interest rates have gone up since the beginning of this year, that has pushed a lot of buyers on the sideline, and rent year over year has just been going up astronomically, double digits across the nation. So as I've said ad nauseum, no matter where you look, inflation, all of these other factors are just squeezing the middle class in terms of higher gas prices, food, energy, you have it. But for most of us, our shelter, whether it be a mortgage or if we are renting, is our biggest expense. So let's dive into this article. We're going to start off with a short video. I'm just going to let it go for maybe about 30 or 45 seconds, maybe close to a minute. But here's a lady that was dying to buy a house, felt that she was getting priced out. The term FOMO, fear of missing out, compelled this lady to pay $70,000 over the asking price this year just to get a fixer-upper. So now she's going room by room to kind of fix things up. And if you're in the camp that I'm in, that basically feels that the housing market is on a decline, this lady, in hindsight, is probably going to find out that she purchased this home at the top of the housing market. Let's listen.
Purchasing my first home.
Allison Braun bought her first home in February. After losing bidding wars and paying $75,000 over budget, she settled on a fixer-upper, expecting to save some money.
It was really surprising getting in here and fixing things up. Overwhelming is another way I'd explain it.
Rents are up a record 17% in the last year, with homes up nearly 20%.
So there you go. Rents are up 17% year over year. Homes up almost 20%. Pick your poison. This deals with inflation. This has a lot of factors. I've said last year, or probably 18 months ago, capitalism always fills a void. So what do I mean by that? When I say capitalism always fills a void, I knew, in my opinion at the time, that when they had all of these moratoriums for rent and these landlords were going months and sometimes years without collecting rent, when the leash came off that proverbial pit bull, it was going to lock in and not let go. So how did the landlords across the nation respond to this? Voila. You've seen rents just astronomically go up and up over the last 24 months. There is no cooling off in sight. I think in some markets you are starting to see rent come down, but for the large majority of people, they're not going to get any relief anytime soon. And even if they do get relief in their prospective rental markets, the question still remains, like everything else that deals with inflation: are your wages keeping up with inflation? And if not, you still have a problem. Once again, I'll go to my analogy. A gallon of milk is $5. It goes to $10. But now, because of deflation, or we're in a recession, that price gets reduced by 30%. So that $10 gallon of milk comes down to $7. But if your wages haven't kept up with inflation and you were used to paying $5 for that gallon of milk, even at $7, that's a 20%, I'm sorry, more than 20%, a 40%, I stand corrected, a 40% increase from $5 to $7. So for most people, guess what? It's still out of reach, even though it's down from its all-time high. So let's go ahead and jump into this article a little bit. Basically, they're saying that if you're dealing with high rents, please don't feel that you're alone, because you're not. Nearly 60% of renters saw a rent increase during the past year, while just 38% said they saw their income increase. And this could be misleading as well, because just because your income went up, that once again doesn't mean anything, right? Did it go up commensurate with rent, commensurate with energy, Commiserate with fill in the blank. Overall, did your wage go up at the same rate or higher than inflation? If it didn't, we're back to that gallon of milk analogy. There may be some relief down the pike, but basically you have a long, long road ahead of yourself. The surge in rents that took place over the last 12 months has created an even greater housing uncertainty for the most vulnerable renters. This is absolutely true, especially if you're in the service industry or you're in one of those occupations where automation is taking over your field. This is even impacting the healthcare profession. You have these teleappointments that some of these doctors are doing. They're doing away with medical assistants and medical secretaries. So everybody has to evolve and get retrained in this new economy that we're facing. Let's go down here and look at a little bit more. Of those who saw a rent increase, 15% said it was a hike of more than 10%. So I asked you, the audience here, how many of you guys got a 10% raise in 2021 to help you deal with rent? Because keep in mind, if you're renting, that's probably your biggest expense. The majority of people probably have to answer that a resounding no, right? Higher housing costs and inflation have altered the plans for many potential home buyers as well. And I've talked about this in previous videos because you need that first home time. You need that first home buyer, that first-time home buyer to get into the housing market to help the whole thing turn. It's different levels. You've got at the bottom level, you've got those folks that are entering the housing market and buying their home for the first time. Those are first-time home buyers. You've got people in the middle who eventually sell to those people who are at the bottom so they can actually get to that next level. And then people at the top, empty nesters, get to the point where, hey, honey, the kids are gone. They're all gone to college. Let's downsize our house and move into something smaller. And then that cycle kind of repeats itself. So every level needs to feed itself so the next level can make that turn, so to speak. And obviously, we know that housing overall, from a nation perspective, is declining. Nearly 3/4 of renters households who were planning to buy a home said they have become less likely over the past year. This is what we're talking about, the high price of homes, while 39% pointed to difficulty coming up with the down payment. Inflation, wages, right? Eating away at your disposable income to the point where you cannot save enough money for a down payment. Okay. 34% blamed interest rates. So isn't that ironic that the lack of disposable income was a greater deterrent from buying a home than interest rates? I tell people all the time, don't brag to me about how much money you make. How much money do you have left over after you pay your expenses? That is what has a direct impact on your quality of life. That is what allows you to sleep comfortably at night. Not having a high income, high consumption lifestyle where you're making a bunch of money, but all of it's going out every month because you've got all of these bills that you have to pay. And for most people, if that is the case, they're paying on liabilities, not assets. So a majority of survey respondents, 62% said they were concerned about not being able to pay for their housing in the next year. Now, keep in mind, if we're going into a recession, which I think we're already in, don't you think this is going to exacerbate these folks' problem? Because guess what? What happens in a recession? Unemployment ticks up. Unemployment goes up higher and higher. More people get laid off. I think this recession is going to be very deep. On average, a recession lasts approximately around 11 months. When you start getting close to 14 months, like we did during the great financial crisis of 2008, you're getting close to almost to a depression. And that's when the government intervened because our financial system was collapsing and they injected it with quantitative easing. And we've been on this debt high, low debt steroid, so to speak, since 2008. And as a result, stock market has been artificially pumped up, and so has the housing market. And I think both of those two large asset classes are due for a big, significant pullback. This is not financial advice. This is just my humble opinion. Roughly 20% of people reported they sometimes don't have enough money for basic food like housing until their next payday. So I'm sure most of you know people who are out there that are living paycheck to paycheck. This is something that for a lot of people, it's almost a generational lifestyle. My mother and father lived a paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. You go out into the workforce. For some reason, you create a situation where you're living from paycheck to paycheck. And that's a cycle in itself. People talk about breaking the cycle of poverty, but breaking the cycle of not having any money after you pay your expenses is a mindset also. And you got to break out of that. And sometimes the only way you can do that is retrain yourself or take some drastic measures of cutting your expenses, because each year it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure your income is keeping with inflation, or your income is higher than inflation, or reducing your expenses to get to that number, whatever that number is. Like I said, historically, I think year to date, I think I took not year to date, but I think from 1960 to like 2022, the average rate of inflation on a yearly basis is averaging some around 4.78%, something like that. So just for easy math, because the government really never gives you accurate numbers, just factor in around 4 to 5% each year on average. Obviously, this is an outlier situation, but that's something you can use as a benchmark to figure out, okay, honey, in 2023, what are we looking at? And what did we miss in 22 that we can make up in 23, and adjust your household budget accordingly. So this is just a really sad situation. I really feel for people because, I'm on record of saying pay your debt before your debt gets a hold of you. I'm on record on Facebook as well, telling people, the clock is ticking. That window of opportunity to pay down some of this debt is slowly going away. I have a friend on Facebook who he and I kind of got into a friendly debate. I think he took it a little bit more personal. I'm not going to call him out or anything, but I just tell folks, hey, don't get emotional about real estate because you're investing in real estate, okay? You can't believe that we're going into a recession and then on the other side of your argument say that you think housing is okay. Directly or indirectly, real estate accounts for almost 62% of our gross domestic product. If you don't believe me, Google it. So if that is a big component of our overall gross domestic product, and you think we're going to have a recession, which encompasses our gross domestic product, it's probably going to affect housing if housing represents 62% of it. That's just me using logic, but some people like to skirt that and talk about, foreclosures are at an all-time low. Well, that's because they've been artificially put on pause for the last 2 years. The amount of folks who are seriously delinquent, which means they're 90 days delinquent or more, is growing at an alarming rate. I think these foreclosure numbers are being manipulated by the government so we don't get into a panic or get some idea that this is going to resemble 2008. And I think in a lot of facets, it will, but only time will tell. So if you're enjoying this type of content, please do me the great honor, smash that like button, comment and share, because I care. Help me grow my channel. I hope you're enjoying my content. Please leave a comment. I will respond, even if your comment is positive or negative. This was the Kevin Strong Show, and I'll see you guys in the next video.